Welcome back to Emotionally Baked, where emotions and baking are the two most perfect ingredients. Hello, and welcome back to Emotionally Baked, where we talk about our emotions while we're baking something fun and yummy through storytelling and conversation, rambling, all the things. So, welcome back. Today's recipe are pumpkin muffins, and we're going to be talking about passion. So passion and pumpkin muffins. And just a little warning, this is not the passion, the romancy passion. I mean, that might come up a little bit in conversation, but that's not what I'm talking about today. I am talking about having a passion for something, like when you get like so invested and like something becomes like your total personality, your world, all the things. So hold tight, and we're going to talk about what we're baking because it's super yummy. Okay, this pumpkin muffin recipe is something that I make not just in the fall, all year round, because my kids love it. They love it, and it's just a breakfast go-to. And since I haven't eaten breakfast today, this is what I will be having for breakfast, and then saving the rest for my kids because they'll probably either have them for snacks when they get home or tomorrow morning. So, and let me share this pumpkin muffin recipe. I don't know where it's from. This is another one of those that I just like. Back in the day, we would just print off recipes off of where we could find them on the internet when it was like and then I just never, I never saved where it was. It just was like, oh, let's just print it and have it. But let me tell you the funniest thing about this recipe. So this recipe, and I will show a screenshot of it. Or I'll show the recipe. But this is not the recipe how I originally had it, how I had printed it out. So this is a funny story. So when I was dairy-free, I was always looking for recipes to make at home to help with, just making the dairy-free a little bit easier. And this recipe had ground flaxseed and water as kind of like a binder. And I just remember either not being able to find that, or it was just difficult to find. So at first, when I first made the recipe, I would use egg replacer because I could find that. And then after a while, it was like, well, that's kind of expensive. Why don't I try the applesauce that I had been trying in my other recipes? So I tried the applesauce and it worked. So ever since then, I've been using applesauce in this recipe. The funny thing is that the original printed out copy of this recipe had still the flaxseed and water situation, and I had just written in notes on the side I don't use this, I use applesauce, and I don't do this, I do this. And a friend of mine asked me for the recipe, and I just took a picture of it, and unknowns to me, I had cropped the picture without my notes. Now some might say I did that on purpose. I didn't mean to do it on purpose. But my notes were cropped, and so she couldn't see that she couldn't see my substitutions. And another big one is that the recipe only called for 2/3 of a can or a certain amount of cups of pumpkin puree. And I just made a mistake when I made the recipe the first time. I honestly thought that the recipe said a can. So I just dumped the whole thing in, and I never edited that in what I had been doing in my recipe. So it's just so funny because my girlfriend was like, my recipe didn't turn out like your muffins, and I don't know why. And it took me so long to figure out my mistake, what I had done and hadn't sent her the right thing. So I'll write this recipe below with the notes that I had done. So I use a full can of pumpkin puree and I use a half a cup of applesauce. And that is what makes this recipe. And I think what really made it different, because back when I had tried the flaxseed and everything, it did change. Like, pumpkin is so orange, and the flaxseed really kind of changed how the tint of the muffins came out. Because when I was doing my recipe, I was doing the applesauce. My pumpkin muffins were so vibrant. They're so vibrant colored, and the flaxseed kind of like dulls the color a little bit. And so I was always like, why does it look so different? And lo and behold, it was because of the substitutions I made. So I will make sure to put the right ones in my description. So if you're ever looking for the recipes, remember they're below the videos, or if you're on Spotify, they're in the description of the podcast. They're there, and any links if they were linkable. So yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to literally mix all of these in a bowl. I don't have my favorite bowl today because it was used and it's not clean yet. So I'm going to use another bowl. We are going to just mix all of the puree, oil, applesauce, and vanilla sugar in this bowl. So the wet ingredients. And then I'm going to sift all of my dry ingredients, my flour, baking powder, baking soda, salt into here, and cinnamon. And the recipe does call for nutmeg. I'm not a huge fan of nutmeg. So even though it says a quarter teaspoon of nutmeg, I do that little doot, like a dash of nutmeg. I just don't know. It has a chemical taste, or like smell and taste to me. So I don't put too much in it. Maybe more in the fall I'll put more, just because it's I feel like a more fall scent. But I just use the cinnamon primarily as my spice. So, all right. So I'm going to get these in the bowl while we chat. So, passion. Passion is, I think, super important to have, whether in terms of a passion in your life. So I feel like we have to have our passions. Like, we have to have the things that drive us every day. Like, you can't just, I feel like you can't just go to work. You can't just go to work. You can't just do the house. You can't just do you've got to have something of your own to be passionate about, and to what drives you forward in, just honestly keeping you sane. Like, if we don't have stuff to keep us sane and interested and things like that, yeah, it's hard. Trust me, I have a difficult time going through a week if I don't do a couple of my different passions in life. So let's discuss those. So let's see. Ooh, my coffee is hot. I was trying to take a sip, but it got really toasty this morning. The water got a little toasty. So my passions some of them have been consistent, but I do want to talk about one that has really kind of blossomed over the past couple of years. But obviously baking is a passion, so we won't go into that. Obviously, we know baking is passion. Plants and gardening have been a passion of mine for a while. When I first got married, it wasn't, but in the last, I would say, 15 years, it has. I started a little garden I lived in a townhouse. On my deck, I had a little garden on my deck, but it really, really, really came in the last 6 years as I've been living here at this house, because my husband's grandmother, bless her, she was, I feel like, the greenest thumb. She had there still is. She and her grandpa built a greenhouse in the back of the property, and she used to grow chrysanthemums professionally. She would show them, and she had the most amazing garden, amazing things. And so my husband and I felt like, well, we should, preserve that love of hers. And so we've updated the garden, we've cleaned out the greenhouse, and every year I've been kind of manifesting and building that more, and got the chickens, got the greenhouse and the garden, and expanded the garden, and I have fruit trees now and grapevines and blueberries and all the things. So that is another passion of mine, but that's not the one that we're going to talk about today. We are going to talk about my recent, over the past 3 years now, maybe it's 3 years now, it's been a while, my passion for reading. Now, I have not always been a reader. I would read because I had to. I would read because it was assigned. I would read, and every now and then, if I caught a book that really, hit me right, and I remember it was a Valentine's weekend or a day or something, because I remember it being Valentine's for some reason, because my husband got me flowers. It was also because, it was February 12th. I can't even remember how long ago it was now. It had to have been almost 10 years ago now. I had nose surgery. I broke my nose. I used to have a Mini Cooper, and I was just getting used to having her. Her name was Coco. She was a little brown Mini Cooper. Loved her so much. And I was out with a girlfriend and opened the door, and I didn't realize how my height was right at the door. Because it was a brand new car and I was still getting used to it. And I opened the door super fast and I slammed the door right into the bridge of my nose. And at first I was like, oh, I'm fine, no big deal. And we're going shopping, and I'm literally feeling like I'm going to pass out, right? And she's like, Heather, are you okay? I was like, I don't know. So she grabbed a popsicle or something out of like a freezer, and in the store, and I held this thing to my nose because it was so funny. It was hilarious. But anyway, ended up having my nose broken. Went to get it checked out by an ENT, and sure enough, nose. And the other reason why I finally went and did, because I ended up passing out, like fainting, and then I did have an MRI, all the things. So they found out that I had broken it so that it's like split, like a piece split. It was gross. Like it was like a spur and it split, and it made me pass out. And so I had to get total nose reconstruction. But I said, inside, like, please do not change the look of my nose, because I like my nose. I was like, don't change anything. So they just did a whole bunch of inside work. So while I was resting and recovering from that surgery, I read the entire Hunger Games series. The first 3 books. Because I'm just going to be sitting in bed. I could watch TV or stuff, but I was just like, well, I'll read. I read those all 3 in I think it was 5 days. It was something ridiculous like that. But that was the only time I remember truly zooming through something like that, zooming through a book. And yeah, so fast forward to what was it? What are we in now? We're in 2025. Maybe 2025. We're 2022. Maybe 2022. I can't remember. I had been on I had been on my phone and looking around, and I was just kind of like, I need something. I need a passion. I had my garden, but yet I was like, I need something. I need something for me. And I had seen this book. Going around, getting a new resurgence, and saying people were, oh, you should read this. You should read this. And if you're not into reading, yes, I literally just eyeballed the vanilla. Hey, it's fine. And I was like, oh, I should pick it up. And that book was ACOTAR, if you know, you know. And I picked it up, and I started reading the first chapter, and I put it down because I was just like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to read it. So, okay. All right. I waited, I think, another month before I picked it up again. Y'all, it's been downhill ever since. Or uphill, whatever you want to call it. It spurred such a love for reading again. And I have to give that book credit because I really wanted to find something that took me away from reality, things that were, just like bogging down my mind. I just wanted to escape. I wanted to, be in a world of fantasy and interesting and just like things that I just didn't, hadn't experienced in my brain but read before. And that book just did it for me. Got a Sift. Here we go. Okay, I've sifted my ingredients. I'm just going to stir it up. And the last step is putting in chocolate chips, and then they're going in a prepared muffin tin. It's super easy, super simple. Nothing too crazy. Just going to mix them. Yeah. So, hence why I gave you a clue as to what I'm talking about. I have no self control shirt, my book earrings. Oh, gotta love a good book. Well, in that so I started reading that book in October, maybe October of 2022. I ended up reading, I believe it's something crazy like 50, not 50, I don't know. I have to look at I kept a journal. I've been keeping a journal of how many books I was reading. So I decided that January that I was going to start journaling my books and making sure I kept track of everything that I was reading and all the things. And I think in my first year of keeping track, I read like between 40 and 50 books. I was like, oh my goodness, Heather, what is going on? Like, you don't read, but I guess you are now. You are a reader. And then the next year, I was like, maybe I'll read a couple, maybe I'll, read more. I didn't actually read more that year. I read less. I think I read less than the year before. So, but I was still keeping up the reading. And I was like, all right, so this, I've been keeping it up and keeping up the reading this year. And I started my journal again. I need to get my journal and I need to show you because it's really fun. But I am going to mix in the chocolate chips here so I can get these in the oven because I'm getting a little hungry. I haven't eaten yet this morning and I'm getting a little hungry. But I'm going to talk about why these books have really affected me in a way, because I feel like that's important. When you have a passion for something, or when you're searching to find your passion, if it's not going to ignite a certain feeling within you, a certain, fire, let's say, and that's, I think it's part of the definition of having passion. If we think about what passion, means, like the other meanings of it, passion, when you're in a relationship and do you have passion with, your significant other, and, what does that look like? It's that yearning, that fire, that, just draw to that person. And if you don't have that draw, that fire, that pull of that passion and of that thing that you love, I mean, really, is it something that you're passionate about then? No, because sometimes you're like, well, like, oh, I'll, which is probably why sometimes I have 10 million crafts that I'm doing at one time, it's because like I can't, my mind's like, well, I'm not necessarily passionate about that. It was fun to do and I liked it, but I'm not necessarily passionate about it. So yeah, we'll get into that in a second. Let me get the chocolate chips in here and starting to get it in the pan. I do use my scooper to put these in. Now, I have realized that when I use a cup of pumpkin, or a can of pumpkin, it does make a lot more, because I remember the original recipe saying that it only made 12 muffins, and I remember going, how is that only 12 muffins? Like they're so much batter. And so I fill them all the way so that they get a nice big poofy muffin top. I don't fill them 2/3. I fill them all the way. I have plenty. And they come out really nice. We really enjoy this recipe. So I'm gonna do this, get them in the oven, 375. I'm gonna keep checking them. My notes say about 20-25 minutes or 30 minutes, but I think it's shorter. I'm gonna make sure I follow and see how long they are, because I think it's about only 18 minutes. So we're gonna edit and see. All right. Okay, so while those are baking, let's continue. All right, so I think if I had chosen a different genre of book, it might not have enticed such a passion for reading, and I'll explain why. So, as I have talked in previous, I believe I have made the video now about empathy, and I will make one about anxiety, but things about real world situations and how they affect me. Reading books that are real world based, or that could really happen, or happen, things that are very much tangible to the world around us, hit me a little different. It hit me a different way. I struggle with, because it's just, again, it's how I it opens up that door of like, feeling. And I'm not saying that I don't feel when I read. It's just, I feel like it was easier for me to pick up the fantasy genre, because because when you start out with saying something like, or there are fairies, or there's dragons, or there's vampires, or things that, it's not real, and I could really let my mind go into that world and not turn it into something different that I know my mind would. And I could just really enjoy it, like just enjoy the whole story for what it was, and like really, tap into the emotions that I could feel. But it just kind of helped having that barrier of a fantasy read, I know this isn't something that could really happen. Unfortunately, there's not bat boys flying around, if you know what I mean. But, it just really spurred this, just wanting to see what new worlds could I dive into? What new worlds could I experience? What new magic systems can I, people are so creative, y'all. These writers, I can't even begin to explain. The traditional fae magic, I feel like systems that I've come upon. I read a series where the magics were in like these cards that were just so, if you've read the One Dark Window series, and One Dark Window, Two Twisted Crowns series, these cards were so intriguing, and the cards had like different, if you held a certain card, you had that magic. it was so intriguing. And just how people come up with these things, wow. Wow. It just totally, I could never, well, I don't know. I thought about dabbling in a little bit of writing. I have a story that's kind of like twirling in my head. But yeah, it's just like, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I know, and I love these creators who will preface saying, because sometimes when you're a fantasy reader, now I haven't tried the no, I lie. I have tried to read. I've picked up like Game of Thrones, and I've picked up some things that are, different fantasy type. That I feel like are a little bit more. The writing is a little bit hard. I wouldn't say harder. It's just the writing is a little bit different than I'm used to, and I struggled with reading it. I struggled with reading one of the books I got because it was still a fantasy, but it was written more like in, I would say, like a Jane Austen or that type of writing. And even then, like, I've tried to read, I still have a collection of Jane Austen's writings, and I've tried multiple times to, finish the books, and it's hard. It's a lot harder. I go a lot slower with that type of writing. So when you find that niche, I don't know how to say that word, niche genre, I really love sticking with it. I dabbled in a couple of books that were, they're romance. They weren't fantasy, and even, because I love a good romantasy. Romantasy is romance and fantasy together. Romance, I found that kind of difficult too, because it was a real world romance, and so I found that kind of difficult because I was like, when you can put yourself in like certain real life situations, it was a little harder. It was good, but it was just a little harder to like take yourself out of it, enjoy the book. But yeah, so fantasy, romantasy is very much the genre I like to go with. I like fantasy because of all the creativity and if you have a map in front of your book, love it so much. The romance just gives it when it's a romantasy, it gives it such a good extra, just like heart tug and pull, because I am a romantic at heart, so I do love a good romance story. So it's just like, love it so much. But what I was saying is that I love I don't remember exactly. I think but there's one particular creator, and I just don't know who it is. If I see it again, maybe I'll put it below if I find who it is. But she gives such a good, because I think when you get a passion and you're really excited about it, and maybe there's people around you that don't quite understand, like, it can be anything. It doesn't have to be books, but like, why do you like that? Or, the question, because, maybe they don't like it, but they want to know why you like it. And I know in the reading world, a lot of there's been question about like, people only like reading this type of book, romance or romantasy or any whatever other genres are, that have that romance factor, that it's just, they're reading it just for that. They're reading it just for the relationships and the passion parts, if you know what I mean. And this one creator was saying, you know what? She was sick and tired of hearing people say that, because some of us really enjoy these books for the way that it pulls us into these worlds and this imagination and this creativity. And she did a percentage breakdown of how much of the actual book was actually the passionate part, wink wink. And literally these popular books, ACOTAR, Fourth Wing, books that people are namely saying, you're like, oh, they're just all about the passion. It was so interesting to see because she broke it down in pages versus percentages of the fantasy part versus the passion part, and literally only about 5% of, I think that was on the norm, but between like 3 and 5% of the book was that, and was the passion part, and the majority is the fantasy part, the creativity, the imagination, the world building, the characters, all the things. And honestly, kudos to who that was. And I'm gonna look for her to see if I can like link her. I think I've seen her mostly on Instagram. Link it, and so you can enjoy it too, because she really makes good points, and it is good points. And what I want to use that to say is that, like, don't let people dull your passion. Because I know that can happen. Whether it's a passion for gardening, baking, reading, whatever it is, whatever your passion is, enjoy. That's what it's there for. I think passions are there for it's the purpose. They're there to make you feel just alive. They're there to make you feel you again. They're there to make you just have the joy that sometimes this world can suck out of us. So don't let, things around you dull the passion, dull what you love. Just keep on keeping on. And if you need help figuring out, like, we'll find it. Like, if you say, well, I have a passion for this, but people tell me, we'll find, we'll talk about it. If you want to talk about it, just send me a message. Like, we will figure it out. We'll figure it out to keep, or find a friend who you trust to say, hey, look, I'm passionate about this. And, that's what I love. I have some girlfriends who are super into reading as well. And I have seriously loved introducing them to these books. I have no shame whatsoever. I am so glad that I introduced them to these genre of books, because it's just been so fun to see them become passionate about it as well. And we can talk about it, and we can have little, conversations and text. And we have group text. We have like Instagram little conversations where we send each other all the book memes about what we're reading. It's just so fun. And if you can't find those people to share passions with too, that's okay. Hold on to it for yourself, because we all need something like that in our lives, and the joy. So my muffins they're looking good in the oven. I'm gonna come back when they're done, because I am super hungry, and I'm gonna see how long this took. I'm still timing it a little bit, so we'll see. So, okay. Well, if this part of the video looks different, it's because my video app that I use, I ran out of storage, and I'm gonna have to figure out how to do that. So anyway, muffins turned out great. I will say $3.75 for 25 minutes. There you go. Look at them. Whoop. So I always think that you should have a pretty plate to eat off of. I love these plates so much. So I'm going to get myself, look at that. Look how beautiful. Should I have two? I'll have two. I will have two. Look, I mean, they are just so delightfully orange and pumpkin-like. This was such a fun recipe, or it is, and just I hope you make it for your family. They're just like my go-to breakfast. So amazing. All right, friends. I just want you to remember to keep those passions that you hold in your life and you love so dearly. Just keep up with them, nourish them, find people to help you, keep it up too. And if not, just remember that you are having those passions to bring you that joy in your life, and that it's worth it. No matter what anybody else says, if it's bringing you joy, that's what's the best thing. All right, I'm gonna enjoy my breakfast. So remember, whether the salt in your recipes comes from tears or a teaspoon, just remember, we baked it out. Bye.